Hi Flosstube, it's Jen, also known as Quirks and Stitches. I'm here with my mom. This is Cindy, also known as Lee's Sin. My dad's name is Lee, so also my last name, which is weird. But, that was ironic after I got married. But this is me and my mom. I've been visiting her this week, and it's been a lot of fun. We've done a lot. Those of you that follow my Instagram, Quirks and Stitches there, you have seen a lot of framing. My mom has beyond spoiled me. She has framed, I think, over 30 pieces.
Nice.
We also went to a couple stores and she has purchased some frames that we will be using later when they come in. But just an astounding amount of fully finished objects, which is something you don't see from me very often. So I'm sorry for spamming the Instagram feed, but I like to have it all under the hashtag Quirks and Stitches FFOs because then I know and can go and see a visual of what I've finished. It's an easier way. I've tried spreadsheets. I've tried writing it down on lists. Like I said, I'm a repetitive list writer, so I do that as well, but I like the visual that Instagram gives me. So, sorry. I hope you've enjoyed seeing what you're seeing. We're not going to overwhelm you with all of it today. When I get home, I'm planning to do maybe a FFO parade or something where you can kind of see and go through. But today I wanted to focus more on my mom because she's here and she's not always with me. So I'm going to give her a chance to talk. I'm just going to give one other disclaimer before she does. We are not using my typical webcam because I left that in Pennsylvania with my husband because he's been streaming on Twitch and doing video game things. So he was a little like, you're going to be away for a week. I'm not letting you take that with me. So this is just my MacBook camera, so the quality might be a little off. So just as a disclaimer. But this is my mom. She's going to talk a little bit about her stitching history. And I'm going to drink wine.
No, she's drinking. Okay. As Jen said, my name's Cindy. I started stitching about 40 years ago. I had a friend, an older friend, neighbor, that had beautiful needlework in her house. And some of it was needlepoint, and others was just this beautiful bell pulls, and the colors were gorgeous. And she was Danish. She was from Denmark, and it was what her sister did, and it was counted cross stitch. So that was the first that I realized what counted cross stitch was, and I loved it. And about that time, my sister, who was living down in Charlotte, North Carolina, got very, very sick and was in intensive care. And I had flown down there and spent about 7 weeks down in the waiting room. And while I was in the waiting room, there was this woman doing some needlework. And it was like, oh my goodness, that is counted cross stitch. And she said, oh yeah, right up the block, there's a really neat little shop. And I didn't have a car down there, so it's like, okay, great. So I walked up to the shop and discovered the shop. And at that time, the only thing counted cross stitch that you could get were charts that were one sheet, and they cost like 50 cents. And that's how you bought your things. But they had samples like they do in cross stitch shops now. Well, I fell in love. So I spent that time when I was down there learning how to stitch. They would teach you. They had little kits and everything. And when I ended up going back up to Philadelphia, I couldn't find anything anyplace. And I was going to a yarn shop. And they had a few little books. And when I was checking out at a yarn shop, she had said to me, oh my goodness, do you know that there's a new shop right on my way home? And I said, no. So she explained to me where it was. And on my way home, I stopped. And it was an old farmhouse. It had a lot of neat shops, stencil shop, and different stores within it. And one of the bedrooms upstairs, a tiny little bedroom, was a cross stitch shop, the Strawberry Sampler in Chadds Ford. And I was in heaven. So she had just opened up. I became one of her first stitchers to do models for her that supported my habit. So at that point, that was 1979. And so I was stitching and became hooked and did it. And then Jen was born in 82. And that was like our first trip we took with her to the Strawberry Sampler. And of course now Beth, who runs it, Ruth Ellen is the owner and was there. And of course they watched Jen grow up. And every time now Jen goes into the Strawberry Sampler, it's like, how old are you?
My mom just gave away my age too.
Oh,
Let me just say.
I did. Yeah.
Yep,
oh,
thanks.
sorry. You're welcome. So anyway, that began my stitching, and I got all my friends involved. Well, then we moved to Jersey, across the river, to this really neat Victorian little town when Jen was 3. And I would travel back and forth because it was only about 45-minute drive. And I got all my friends in Winona hooked on cross stitch. And then, of course, I decided I needed to learn to cross stitch too, or open up a shop. So I eventually opened up a small shop in our little town, Friends Who Count, and had that for about 7 years. But when we started, Ginny Thompson, who was down in North Carolina or South Carolina, I forget which. But anyway, she was very instrumental. She has a flower thread. She died in 2010, but she was very instrumental about teaching and bringing over counter cross stitch from Denmark. She would take tours to Denmark to learn. And the neat thing for us learning how to do it was you didn't need a hoop. I mean, all we had was like 14 count, 8 Ida, and a hardanger. You had 22 count. And with the hardanger, you would go over one thread that you needed a hoop for. But the 11 count, 14 count, 18 count, and then it went into 16 count Ada, you didn't have to use a hoop to do it the Danish way. And that's what we all loved. And you didn't make knots. You caught your thread, started in the middle, all these little tricks that we started with, and then they have evolved into, when I watch Jen do it or I watch people doing it now, you've evolved to different things. But, it was just an amazing thing. You started as a collection, then you got all these designers, Prairie Schooler, grew up with them. And, then it kind of phased off. Jen got older. I kind of taught her, and then I got into other things. I'd been quilting before I started cross-stitching, dropped it for cross-stitching, but then life happened, and I started teaching school and just didn't do it as much until Jen got older, and then all of a sudden we started, and of course then it had evolved into linen, which I do most of my stuff on linen now. And I love samplers. We lived in a big Victorian house that had been a church converted into a house. So I had all these walls, and you can see behind us, I love samplers and reproductions. And so that's, most of the stuff I do. And I like to do it on linen. I still just use DMC most of the time because when I finish, I have a way that we learn to finish and frame, and it's getting it wet. And I'm so nervous about the hand-dyed stuff. So we just talked to Paula at Craft Gallery when we were there, just say, okay, tell me how you do. Do a piece
Help us.
Yeah. So she explained how she did it. So I helped a little bit. Still doesn't make it as nice as I'm used to framing, but I'm still a little trepidatious. But that's kind of my history with how, 40 some years, and Jen's been doing it for several now. I mean, quite a few. And she stitches a whole lot more than I do, but she's gotten me motivated to, course, to buy charts and stuff, but to have the stuff, but to get it kitted up. And she's going to show you some tricks she uses and helpful ways to keep your floss and stuff that have made it really nice when we kit up our kits. So, it's been fun. It's been great seeing a lot of people on Flosstube watching their videos and feeling like...
Yeah, we have done some Flosstube watching while I've been here. We were catching up on Pretty Southern today. I don't know if I showed you Donna Ray or not yet, but that's on the works. Donna Ray, glad you're feeling better. And thank you for your kind words when I wasn't. It's been a nice time to kind of acclimate Mom to some of the newer stuff that's been happening, but also to learn from her, because I don't know if you watched my last video. I did iron. I did try that, and I didn't burn the house down or scorch the fabric or do any of that stuff. I think the biggest thing is I don't know where to iron it in my house, so I still am not sure I'll do it when I'm home. But I know, but people were like, you found all of those frames for all those things. And we do. My mom will visit Goodwills or thrift stores, and she just picks up frames as she goes. So we don't, well, I don't, she does. I don't see a frame and think of the project I'm going to stitch for it. I stitch things and then hope I'm going to find a frame that fits in. And we got really lucky this trip when I was raiding her room downstairs. So our process kind of was, we took all of my pieces that we have. Some were here, some I brought. I did not bring all of my cross-stitch supplies like I really wanted to, which was good because we really didn't have time for all of that. But, and we just went down to her framing room. How many frames do you have down there?
Oh, hundreds.
I mean,
Yeah.
hundreds of frames, and they're all old, and some are newer. But I mean, there were ones from my grandparents' house, which I love those ones because it's like it has that connection. A couple of the ones are my grandfather's, and I can picture the baby picture that was in them as I used to visit their house. So I like being able to bring that into my house. But like I said, we didn't cut down any frames. She did do some painting. She's into like the chalk paint stuff. I've not gotten there yet. So she will chalk paint them and distress them to match kind of the color scheme that we're looking for in the piece. So she also has a painting room downstairs. It's a very nice little setup that she's got going. So we spent 2 full days of my visit just going through ironing, framing. I was looking through her patterns because I went shopping a little bit, and things that she's never going to stitch now, or that, I would like to, because, prairie schooler, it's great. And cross-eyed cricket, she's got them all. So, going through her, the ones she has duplicates of. So we spent a lot of time doing that this visit. I lost my train of thought, but that's okay. So one of the things that I was saying was I don't pick a frame and stitch for it. My mom will, and she actually pulled down an example of one of her finished pieces, and I'll let her talk about it.
Well, actually, and I bought the frame first. Most of the time, I love old things, so when I'm at Goodwill or yard sales, a lot of yard sales and garage sales, when I see frames, especially the old ones, flea markets, I buy them. And this frame actually was one, I don't know how to do this. Okay, Jen, you do it.
I'm going to hold the piece.
I actually had this frame first because I thought it was so interesting. I thought it's real old and really neat. And it wasn't until after I had this frame for a while that I got this pattern.
Which Seasons by Kathy Schmidt.
Yes, Kathy Schmidt. And they're kind of like little hanger. And I was looking at one day and I'm thinking, oh, and I'm very thematic too. I was a teacher and I like different seasons. Yeah. And so it was 4 seasons and I'm thinking, oh, that's great. I want to stitch this. And then I remembered the frame that I had and they fit perfectly. But then what I'll do is I'll pick the count, then I'll try to pick the count and see, and whatever I did on linen, I was probably a 30 count or 32, 36 count, whatever it was, fit perfectly into each one of those. So I had to frame each one of them separately. I did them separately. Not too neat on the back.
They're not all but they're all individually stitched. And you don't use hand dyed, but this is the variegated.
This was variegated from DMC. And I thought, well, I'll use that because then I can finish it the way I like to finish it. And it worked out great.
And you didn't do individual stitches either.
No, and that's another thing. When we learned to stitch, we loved the sewing method. You were told you didn't do each cross stitch. You did one and then you came back. And that was another thing back in the 70s, when it came over, that was so wonderful to do. And of course, now everybody's got let's punch and stab or do individual cross stitches to make it look right. But this was small enough and I had a lot of just single stitches going up the border and stuff. So that worked out.
No, it has a ton of variation.
Right. You can really see the and I matched it up to whatever color she kind of had said to use because I don't think
it's not what it's called for. Oh, I thought.
I don't. Maybe it is. I don't remember. I'll have to. No,
because I thought you had to order it when it was like international. Like it wasn't something you got here.
Yeah, I think maybe. Yeah, I don't remember. But and then there are times when I will have a frame I want to use, and I'll think, and if it's off a little bit, then I will adjust the pattern. Maybe I have to use an extra row or cut back or add more spaces in. Since I do a lot of samplers, it makes it easier. So I'll adjust the pattern a little bit to fit it. And there are some times when I'm actually looking for a size that I find. And I know that I can get some bigger frames and cut them down. And I now have a friend who probably can do that and show me how to take a big frame, miter the corners, and make them smaller, which that'll be our next project to do. what we do.
We'll learn that next.
Yeah.
So this week was filled with a lot of finishing. We also did some cross-stitch store venturing. So I was spoiled in my framing, but I'm also going home with quite the haul. I picked up the fabric to do a year at Hawk Run Hollow, but I'm not going to do it as one big piece. I'm going to do each month separate and get one frame and swap them out. So that's that was one of the acquisitions, plus I don't even know how many patterns. Like, really, guys, like really. It was just kind of like, oh, okay, we're with mom. So it's Mother's Day tomorrow, but somehow I think away with more than she did. I am cooking brunch. We had banana bread. It might be a huge fail because baking. You know, I
taste good.
I cook really well. Like I can, yes, baking no, but I thought I'd try. So hosting brunch tomorrow for her and my grandma and my aunts. So, but it's been fun. So we also wanted to show. I know I talked about it. I think in my last video, his eyes on the sparrow. It's a project that both my mom and I decided to do together. We're doing it as like a mini stitch along. But we're doing it differently. And I think that's the neatest thing about a stitch along is that you really see how each stitcher's process is different. Because stitching is so much more than just looking at a pattern and putting it on fabric. Like, there is so much intention that goes into it and thought. But I just think it's so neat that it's not really the same for everyone. So we wanted to show you those. The first thing that I do when I get a pattern that I'm going to stitch is I make pattern cards. I talk about these on Instagram if you're like, what are you talking about? So I made a template that I make pages and pages and pages, and I wish it was more intuitive because I would share it, but it's a table in Word, and it's like hiding cells and merging cells, and it's not intuitive. So I wish I could make it more user-friendly. But so these are all the colors that are called for in the pattern, and I store the floss that I'm working on this way. It's easier to do it this way, I think, when you're doing DMC. When you're doing overdyed stuff, I think it's easy. It's not bad when you're doing it on something that's only using one strand. The one I'm doing right now is I have to use two because it's on a 30 count, I think, so I'm using two strands, and I will pull out like a whole 6-strand thing. And so I know that all the variegation is the same, and I'll pull, and then I keep those in like Ziploc baggies, and so I don't throw away the scraps of overdyed like I do with DMC, because DMC is a little less expensive and I have a lot of it. So, but yeah, this is how I keep my floss. And I made one, so my mom's doing it, but she is not doing it with the overdyed floss. She's just using DMC. So she has all of hers stored very similarly. If I'm doing it on a small count, these are the nice size because I can pull one strand. But if I have a thing, you don't have yours over here, do you?
No.
Okay. If I'm doing it with DMC, my length of cord, I don't know how to explain this, but it's longer. It's like double the length. But instead of folding it over again and making it match this, I just snip it here. Like, I'll pull a thread out and I snip. That way, if I'm going to use whatever is left over in another project, I'm not bound to it being something, like having such a short strand if I'm going to like double over and do the loop trick. Does that make sense?
Kind of.
If she doesn't understand me, there's really no way you guys are going to understand me. But it works for me. But yeah, that's how we keep our flosses. So,
well, because we pre-cut it. I don't know how many people pre-cut. I mean,
I don't know how other people store their stuff. I know you use floss bags and things like that, but I don't know. That's a lot of opening.
We did the Lorraine. I mean, that had come out, and so I will take a skein of DMC, and so does she, and you pull it all out, and then we used to just measure it 18 inches, and so it was all pre-cut. So when the time came, and you'd loop it around a loop, and you just pull one strand out or two strands to use. Then we realized, oh, we'll leave it cut twice as long and just use one strand when somebody clever thought about, do the loop trick where you catch the loop and you don't have to catch tail to not make a knot.
And I don't notice a problem with that not laying straight. I know that some people say that. I don't know if it's just that I'm not as particular. I mean, I think my stitching looks okay. So it's not something that I need to have look different.
And The really good thing when I started stitching for Strawberry Sampler years ago was because I was stitching for somebody else, I really made myself do it exactly how you were supposed to do it because it was for somebody else. I think if I hadn't been doing it, maybe I would have not stitched as neat, but you can look at my back, you can look at Jen's back, and it looks just as good as the front does, except they're going a different direction. Yes, it does. I mean,
I
you're
also
very
don't
neat.
snip my threads and
Well,
really
that
short.
she doesn't. No, she never snips her threads, and I don't know
There
why
are
she
really
thinks
long tails,
leaving
and-
those long tails are doing anything.
I just think it's gonna keep it locked
Well,
in
it's not,
better,
but-
and then you can see
yeah.
it through the fabric. I'm trying
Yeah.
to get better about that, but you know.
So all my floss is stored. I have all the colors, as does she, in a binder, and it's all pre-cut. They're not on bobbins, and we've tried all of the different
And
things.
I will admit, I was a bobbin person.
Yeah,
like
you were.
when she gifted me my first master set of DMC, it was all on bobbins. Yeah, remember you did that for me on Christmas. It was a great Christmas. But then I figured I don't like the creases in the floss when it's on bobbins. So I use that as like my backup now. And then I also have, and maybe next video, I'll show you my master sets and how I store it. It's a pretty good system, I think. I don't have master sets for like Gentle Arts and Weeks Dye Works. I pick those up as I go. And like, I guess my stash really increased when I did Stitch Madness. Like I really have a lot more now. And I, like I said, I'm trying to be mindful of keeping the loose threads and not just putting them in my Ort jar because they're more expensive. So his eye is on the sparrow. I'm doing mine on 36 count buttercream by Lakeside Linens, and my mom is doing hers on 40 count
raw natural linen.
raw natural linen.
Dirty
So
linen,
you saw mine last time. I'll give you another little glimpse. And I am a page stitcher, so I do like to try to get this without getting it in my wine. I do like to finish a page before moving on to another. However, I believe a page finish on this one cut off the cow like right there. And I was like, I'm not going to just leave like his tail off or something like that. It's also why I did this half of the bird the way I did it, because now finishing the rest of him, it's all only on the next page. So I don't have to pull out the first page of the pattern again. I can just look at page 2 or something. However, I'm going down. So I like to, because when I stitch in hand, I roll my fabric like this and hold it in my left. I don't know how to show you that. I hold it in my left hand. So I prefer to have my whole piece done down the left-hand side, and then I can roll it consistently. I find if it's not all the way down, it doesn't roll nicely. It like gets crooked. And so that's my plan right now. We'll see. But tomorrow we're going to, after brunch is done and it's just back to us, we're going to pull this out and do some stitching time on it because we haven't done that yet. Yeah. I have done my 365 of cross stitch. She made sure a couple days because I was like, I don't think so. I've done stitchy related things, but no, I have done at least a floss length of stitching each day. So this is mine. And then my mom has a different process.
I have a different process. You should hold this up for me. Because I can't do it.
It's very confusing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Very confusing. I, on the other hand, don't like this page thing. So I like to get my border in. So I start, and I like to know once my border's in, I get all the way down. Because first of all, it's a rhythm and it's the same. So then I know I can count. I don't have to keep looking at my chart. I know it's so many up, so many across, so many down.
I get bored of that. I can't. I don't.
And I'm good with that, especially when I'm watching or whatever TV. It's just good. I don't have to keep looking at my pattern. So I've gotten it all the way across, and I stopped there just because I'm going to fill in these parts because I want to make sure I didn't miscount anything too, and put some of the flowers in. But I just like having, and then I'll go down a little further. Then I'll work from top to bottom all the way across probably. I won't, and it's mess with the patterns because I kind of stopped buying patterns. I mean, all the old patterns, even if they were big patterns or the Danish kits that we would get, they just had huge, huge charts. It was all on one chart, and you just kept folding it. It was all there.
They're really annoying to make working copies of. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So that's easier, but you've just got to watch, and I'm just not used to the whole page thing. I mean, I've done some big projects, but
She's doing Hawk Run too. I showed that in my last video. Autumn
the
and Hawk
fall,
Run
yeah.
Hollow. She's not going to as much of the Halloween stitcher as I am. She is not.
I do not do Halloween.
So she focuses more on like religious things and Christmas. She does bees in the fall, spring, and patriotic in the summer. Do you have a? It's just fall.
Fall is just Thanksgiving, yeah, just the fall colors and Thanksgiving.
And then Christmas and winter. And like she'll take down some of her Christmas stuff and just have snowmen up like that. But she has a lot more just like year-round stuff with her samplers and things like that.
I collected Noah's Ark for years, so I have several. I'm just going to do another kind of Noah's Ark in another part of my living room collage like we have behind us above the sideboard with just Noah's Arks done. Yeah. So that's mine.
I wanted to take a second too to show you another one of my finished pieces while we were here. Not one that you've seen on the framing. I feel like we should have a name for what just happened. The framing extravaganza. I don't know. But I stitched this piece for my parents. So it lives here. And it's the Barbara Anna Love Never Fails. And I stitched it for their 40th wedding anniversary. So I made a couple changes. It's their initials down at the bottom, the C and the L. And then the year up the top, I put the year they were married, 1976. And I did this one as a surprise for my mom. However, I didn't frame it. So. Surprise! You get to go frame this. But I loved this piece. It's on 32 count. It was DMC. It's whatever it's called for. I did realize that it's hanging on the wall. Sometimes I forget to do things. So this flower, not filled in. It totally isn't. No, this one over here is. It should look just like that. It doesn't. But it's a little quirky, finish thing. I did it really fast. I think I got this the beginning of March, and their anniversary was the 26th. So I surprised them. Did I surprise you? Or I just did. I don't know if it was a surprise, but I came out for their anniversary. So it was a quick finish. But she got this framed at. We're going to plug one of our stores that we went to this week at the Craft Gallery in Findlay. Findlay,
Ohio. Yes.
I said it wrong last time. Sorry, Paula.
I think she said Fremont.
I did because it was
which is totally wrong.
Near here. But we checked out that store this week. They were so funny, her and Carlton. They're getting ready to go to the Prim Stitcher thing in Hershey. They're going to be the store there. So if you go, check them out. If you're ever in this area, check them out. They actually pulled out my Flosstube and were playing it in the store, which was crazy to see myself as I was shopping. But we do a ton there. So definitely check out the store if you're in the area. I don't know. I mean, it's a great store. They have a ton of inventory. If I was, wearing makeup and things, I might have done like the tour I've never done that before. So I know Pretty Southern, you do that all the time. That's maybe a little bit above my comfort zone. No makeup. I looked pretty bad when I went. But check them out. They're a great store. They gave us some good deals on some frames too. So
and when I order frames, when we get frames, they have a really nice selection. And because I frame and I just get the frame, she makes it up for me, and then I pick it up and she cuts the backboard for me, which is really easier because they got the machine. And then I bring it home and frame the material myself, frame the actual piece, which saves money and so we can buy more frames. But some pieces you just can't find frames for. Although Jen just took a whole lot of money into
I really lucked out, let me tell you.
Oh, yeah.
But no, and they help you out. They let you, like, kind of pick and choose.
Yeah,
she was like,
really
okay,
good.
you try things.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun. We also checked out the Crafty U out in Strongsville, another great store. Just a tremendous inventory, very organized. They have a great system for their models on the wall, so you really, what you're going to you can find it. It's not just, I don't know where that is. I'm not sure we have it in stock. They're on it. And that's where I got, I think, my fabric for Yard Hawk Run Hollow and a couple other just smaller pieces to try things with. and like I said, a bunch of patterns that
Mm.
you'll see eventually. So,
I can't think of anything.
it's been a fun week.
Yeah.
Thank you again for the Instagram stuff. We've done a lot of stitching, a lot of wine, a lot of beer.
Yeah.
It's been a great week to kind of decompress, and for me at least, she's been on host mode the whole time, so I don't know if it was decompressing for her. But you know, it's so nice to be able to spend time with my mom. So I'm thankful to my husband who let me escape and is taking care of all of the animals. There is a cat here. If you saw the picture of him sitting at the dining room table at dinner, he is a spoiled little thing too. But he's not making an appearance today.
No.
So I don't ever remember how I finish these.
We can toast.
We will toast because we've been doing a
Yeah.
lot of that. So, cheers. Keep stitching. Keep drinking wine. Enjoy the people you love. And film, question, comments, all the things you want. So, thanks so much. Bye, guys.
Bye.